Yep, I'm on.
Oh my gosh. Let me go live. Cheat sheet Christmas. Why won't it let me go live?
All right.
Got my time timer.
I'm actually gonna time it.
Ooh, there is it's a little hard to hear you, Eden.
How about now?
It's like there's just like an echo. I think it's because of the mic. From my end.
Can you hear this? Okay.
It's just like it's bumping up. Yeah. We should probably use headphones with this sort of stuff. Do you have a? Yeah, we should probably grab a pair real quick.
Okay, we are live. Hello, everyone. One sec, sorry about the delay as we get things put together.
All right. How about now?
All right, it's much better now.
Cool.
For sure. Okay, cool. We good.
All right, we good.
All right. Welcome, everyone. I am John. I'm the selection manager at App Academy. We put this little live stream together to kind of give you guys a preview of the interview as it is at App Academy. Sorry about the technical issues at the beginning because this is the first time we're doing this and we're trying to get things figured out. Next time we'll do it. Hopefully it'll be a little smoother at the beginning. Anyway, I'm going to send you to Eden, who is one of our interviewers here at App Academy, and he will be conducting this.
Hey guys, how's it going? As John just said, my name is Eden. I'm an interviewer here at App Academy, and really excited about this live stream tonight. So we have Michael here as well. He will be playing the role of the interviewee in this demonstration. And yeah, we're going to be doing this. We're going to be trying to keep it as real and authentic as possible to really give you guys a good idea of what to expect. And also, I'm going to be highlighting things that I noticed that Michael does well throughout the interview. And yeah, at that, I guess let's get started. So why don't you pull up the editor right now? We'll be using HackerRank as a shared code pair editor today. This is the same service platform that you'll use in any App Academy technical interview. And so I think we have the code pair ready. Cool. All right, cool. So how's it going, Michael?
It's going well, Eden. How are you?
I'm doing well, thanks. Yeah, looking forward to this. So if you move on over to the scratch pad here in the top left, these are the formatting instructions just on how any of these technical interviews will go. So just take a second, read these over. Let me know if you have any questions.
Awesome. Thank you. All right, due to some speed reading, I can assume that there's going to be 3 problems, 2 of which I'm going to be doing by myself, 1 of which will be a pair programming experience with you.
Yep,
Correct?
that's right. And yeah, you'll have 15 minutes for each problem. And I'll give a little bit more advice, tips, I guess, once we get to the pair programming question. But we'll be doing your 2 solo ones first.
All right, great.
Cool. So if you're good with that and don't have any questions, let's move to the question 1 tab. Now, before we get started, what language will you be using today?
I'll be using Ruby.
Okay, great. So I've formatted the editor for Ruby. And so now what happens, I've got your first question here. So once you give me the ready, I'll paste it in this box that you see here, and I'll start your 15-minute timer. Before you start coding, please just read the prompt, make sure you understand it. Ask me any questions if you have any about the inputs or outputs. And then please, before you start coding, if you can just give me a high-level strategy of kind of what your plan of attack is to go through the problem, and then from there we can jump into the code. Okay?
All right, that sounds good.
Cool.
I'm ready to roll.
All right, good luck. Here's your first question.
All right, missing numbers. Given an array of unique integers ordered from least to greatest, all right, write a function that determines which integers are still needed to fill in the consecutive set. All right, so what I believe this problem is asking of us is, given an array as an input that is sorted with integers, we need to return a new array that contains all the numbers that are missing sequentially from that initial input array, I believe. Am I right about that?
Yep, you've got it.
All right, cool. So we know that, I personally like to write notes to lay out my strategy. Is that okay?
Oh yeah, please, by all means. Yeah, feel free to use some comments to kind of give yourself a roadmap if that helps.
Cool. So our input is going to be an array. Our output will also be an array. We know that the input is sorted, and we are trying to return the array with all missing integers not listed in the input. All right, that's a little bit verbose, but I think we get the gist there.
Mm-hmm.
All right, so I think the best thing that we can do is, let's see. We can, since we know it's sorted, we could just take the first element of the input array as well as the last element of the input array, and essentially we could iterate through all of those numbers. And if for each number that we're on, if it's not included in the original input array, we will shovel that into our answer array, which we can declare at the very beginning of the method.
Cool, yeah. So yeah, just a quick timeout here. Everyone watching the stream, so a couple things. So notice how he wrote out comments to kind of just remind himself what we know about the problem and what he has to do. I mean, by no means is this required or anything, but I find that it often helps to really be explicit about what's going on and make sure you fully understand the problem before you move forward. And he was able to kind of use all this information to come up with a pretty fancy solution. So yeah, back into the interview. That sounds like a good starting point, Michael. So why don't you jump in and start coding?
All right, cool. So first things first, we have to obviously declare the method. So we're going to say def missing numbers. That's going to take an input array. We're going to close that off just to be safe. That'll be cool. All right, so we have an answer array that we know we are going to return into it. And from my notes, I know I'm going to be shoveling the appropriate num into the answer, assuming that it's not included in the input. So I'll just have an answer array ready for that. As I said beforehand, and I didn't necessarily mark it down, but I should have, I want to create a range from the first element to the last. And I know that's going to work because in the instructions it says that it's ordered from least to greatest, which is just a very verbose way of saying it's sorted. So we're going to go from array at element 0 all the way up to and excluding the very last element of the array. We'll put those in parentheses. And I want to go through each of them. And I know that there'll be numbers. So I'll just declare the variable within the block parameter as num. All right, cool. So I know that if the number that I'm examining is included within the input array, I don't want to shovel it in. So I'll say if, let's see, array.include num. If the array does not include num, then I'm going to take that answer and I'm going to shovel num into it. Great. Sweet. So let's see. The last thing I got to do would have to be just to return answer, and I'll just make that explicit just so everyone's on the same page. All right. Cool. I think this works. I think this works.
So quick timeout again. Notice how much Michael talked throughout that whole solution. He was talking about his whole thought process, and this is really great. It helps us interviewers out a lot because at the end of the day, what we're trying to see is how you think and how you work through a problem. So the clearer you can be about kind of your thought process going through solving a problem, the better. Michael was able to do it kind of as he typed, which is great. If that's not, like, if multitasking is not your thing, it's also totally fine just to ask your interviewer, listen, like, is it okay if I code this out first and then I'll explain kind of everything chunk by chunk as I go. Both workflows are totally fine there. So yeah, let's jump back in. So Michael, you think you're done with this solution? This is looking good. Could you maybe run through one of these example inputs and kind of walk me through line by line what we should expect? Maybe this input on line 8.
All right, that sounds great. All right, so let's say that I'll just write like comments down here just to like help visually follow along. So we know our input is going to be 2, 3, and 7. Mm-hmm. Because of that, at the very beginning, our answer will still be empty. So our range is essentially going to be from 2 excluding 7. So that should be every number from 2 up to and including 6. So when we do dot each, the first number we're going to be examining is going to be the 2. So we know that that is included in the array, so we're not going to shovel it in to answer. The next number we're going to be checking is 3. It is included as well, so we're not going to shovel it in. We should hit 4 next. We know that isn't included, so that satisfies this condition right here. Therefore, we're going to shovel num into answer. Next is going to be 5. Same sort of deal. We're going to shovel 5 into answer. 6, exact same thing. 6 goes into answer. And that would be the last thing that we're going to be examining through this each method. And once that's complete, which it is at this point, we are going to be returning answer, which should include 4, 5, and 6.
Cool. Awesome. Time out again. When I asked him to kind of walk me through this code, I actually really like when interviewees will kind of use comments, because it kind of helps me get a gauge of if they're understanding, the values of variables along the way. So comments are totally your friend in these sorts of things, especially when you're stepping through your code line by line. Please feel free to use comments. Those are really great, both to help you with your thought process and the interviewer. So jumping back into this, Michael, so we still have some time left on the clock. We are able to use that time however you want. If you feel satisfied with the solution, we can move on. Otherwise, you can maybe refactor something or optimize the solution if you see that's possible, but you have some time that you can play with.
All right, so I think there's a couple quick things that we could do just to clean this up. We don't need to have this return statement here because Ruby implicitly returns the last evaluated line of code, so we could just leave that as answer. For this one-line if statement, we can actually change this if into an unless. Mm-hmm. Take out that bang, move this code on line 21 right in front of it, turn that into a one-line conditional. And I think that would be I think this is like clean, straightforward. What do you think?
Cool. Yeah, that looks good. And yeah, so kind of once you are satisfied with the solution and if you have time left, we give you 15 minutes, which is honestly a lot of time for a lot of these questions. So don't feel super pressed for time. It's really important to stay calm and relaxed. And if you do end up kind of reaching a solution that you're satisfied with before the clock is up, it's a really good time to kind of demonstrate your knowledge of Ruby or whatever language you're using, and to kind of make some style decisions and kind of really show what you can get, what you've got. And also, if you think you can use a method but aren't totally sure of it, please be vocal with that to the interviewer and think like, oh, you know, I think I could use map here instead of each or something like that. And just to, you know, it always helps to provide more information than less. So, and we'll either kind of go with it or not, or maybe we'll ask you to write it out in comments if you're not totally sure if it would work. But yeah, don't be shy. Feel free to kind of demonstrate as much knowledge as you have. Cool. So that all sounds pretty good, Michael. So I'm just going to copy this code over and we'll move on to the next question. Okay.
Sounds good.
Cool.
Well, they're moving to the next question. I just wanted to let you guys know that we have chat in the live stream. If you have any questions about our admissions process or the interviews or preparing for the interviews, scheduling the interviews, anything, go ahead and ask it in the live chat. If you don't see the live chat on your page, go ahead and refresh and it'll probably show up there. All right.
Okay, back to the interviewer. So Michael, I'm making another tab now. So you should see a question 2 tab pop up.
All right.
Cool.
Got it.
So yeah, I see you've moved on over there. So again, just like the last question, I've got your question here, question number 2. And just like the last one, once you give me the okay, I'll paste it in and start your time. And also like the last one, if you can just kind of give me your overall thought process before diving in. Okay?
All right, sounds good.
Cool. All right, so good luck. Here is your second question.
Thank you. Valid walk. You have a walking robot given a string of compass directions, north, east, southwest. It will travel 1 mile in each of those directions. Write a method to determine whether a set of directions will lead your robot back to its starting position. Okay, so I think this problem is asking us, you know, like given an input of strings, which will consist of like N, E, S, or W, we want to know if a robot were to follow those directions, if it will end up in the exact same position as it started. So that's kind of like tricky. So I'm trying to think. I'll just write down some notes just to keep my thoughts all together. I want to get back to starting position. Input is a string.
Mm-hmm.
Our output is a Boolean. It's going to be either true or false. Okay, so first thing that comes to mind when I think about this stuff is like rise over run, right? So if you're going north, you're going like up 1. If you're going south, you're going down 1. If you're going west, you are going like to the left or like, you know, down 1 in that case. If you're going east to the right, you would be going up 1. So I'm thinking maybe I can have like 2 variables that keep track of like how far I am away from like the origin vertical or horizontal point. I know that sounds a little confusing. I'm a little tripped up right here. Maybe there's a simpler way.
Yeah, is there maybe another way you can? I mean, it sounds like that's a valid kind of way of thinking about the problem. But is there maybe a way you can extrapolate that and I guess reframe the question to kind of maybe think like what does it mean to really get back to where you're started?
Yeah, thank you for throwing that out there. I guess the one thing that does, like, if we're trying to like equalize everything, get everything kind of to 0. Oh, wow. Okay. Maybe we can use like a hash to count just like how many of each direction we have. And as long as like the amount of norths equal the amount of souths and the amount of easts equal the amount of wests, we can assume at that point that the robot has returned back to its original position. I think that makes sense. So would that be possible? Is it okay to use hashes and more like advanced data structures, I guess, in these type of problems?
Totally fine. Yeah. If you're comfortable with using a hash, I totally encourage you to use a hash. If it's more just something that you think would be helpful but don't know how to implement, that's totally fine to tell your interviewer that. We're not expecting you to have a advanced grasp on hashes or anything. So it's fine to bring that up, and if you're confident with it, like what it seems that you are, I would say totally go for it.
Okay, cool. So we will definitely, in terms of like the literal strategy, we're gonna like iterate through the string, and for each direction, like add 1 to its hash value, and then at the end, see if north equals south and east equals west. So I think that would be good notes and bullet points for me to follow as I execute this thing. Is it all right to start the code?
Yeah, so that sounds like a good strategy. Yeah, why don't you jump in?
All right, we're going to declare the method first. I'll say def valid walk, and this is going to take in a string, and so I'll just give that some space. All right, cool. So we're going to want a hash. So I'll call it a directions hash, and this will be equal to hash.new at 0. Do you want me to explain why, like, I'm doing the 0 here? I suppose?
Sure. Yeah.
Okay. So that allows us to set up a hash with a default value. So anytime I just run across a number, I can just increment how many times I found it by 1. So the very first time I run into a number, it will not exist in the hash. So by setting the default value, I can just like easily get things started and to give it its first initial point, if that makes any sense.
Gotcha. Okay.
Okay. Cool. So direction equals hash.new. So now we want to iterate through each character of the string. So we're going to do string dot each char do. This will be like, I'll just call it character. Have it at end. HackerRank does not want me to have style, unfortunately, but moving on. So all right, so now we've created this. We're going to iterate through the string, looking at each character because of each char. So now I essentially want to say direction at that character plus equals 1. All right, sweet. So like, let's take this like first input, for example, like with like these 4 n's. Like as I'm iterating through the strings, the first one's going to be n. It won't be initially in the hash, so it's going to take advantage of that default parameter of 0. So the direction with the key of n is going to have the value of 1. The second time it will be incremented to 2, so on and so forth to 3 and 4, which we know for a fact means that the robot is just like going straight. It is not going back in the direction. So we know it should return false, which is why I need to add the final bit of code to solve this problem. So we are going to say if direction at north is equal to the direction at south, and the direction at east is equal to the direction at west, then we can return true. All right, no, that's not what I want, HackerRank. Return, otherwise we are going to return false.
Okay, cool.
All right, I think this does it. Would you like me to run through my code with the example on line 9?
Yeah. Just a quick, before you do that though, quick note. This is a really good example of Michael did a great job kind of coming up with an idea that made sense, but was kind of taxing technically. There was a lot of kind of, depending on if it were north or south, you'd be adding or subtracting. If it ever feels like a problem's getting kind of overly complex in the planning phase, it's often helpful to kind of just take a step back and reevaluate the parameters of the problem and try and just frame it differently in your mind. And Michael did a really good job of that. Of like, he had an approach that might work, and then was able to kind of like realize that it was getting a little too hairy and technical, and step back and think of, okay, is there any other way I could do this now that I've at least come up with like a brute force sort of approach. So that's a really good thing to start practicing. And it's much better to come to that realization in the planning phase than it is in the middle of while you're coding out your solution. So yeah, hats off to that. But yeah, Michael, so yeah, could you maybe just run through this code with an example? Let's try the one on line 9.
Yeah, no worries. All right, so that input is this, NENESSWW. Okay, so when we start this method and we put that input like into this method, we're going to declare that direction hash, and it's going to have a default value of 0, which is great. So now we are going to iterate through each of the characters of this given string. So at first it's going to be n. So the value of like the key of n in the direction hash is going to equal 1. Next is going to be, so I'll just do this. So n equals 1 at first. All right, then the next letter that we're examining is E. That should equal 1, 2. Next, we're going to have n, which will be 2. Next, we got E again, which should be 2. We have S, which is going to be 3. It's going to hit that again. It's going to be 4 for the sake of a space. We're going to hit W, which is going to equal 1, and then it's going to equal 2. So at the very end of the day, we have essentially in our directions hash n equals 2 south. Oh, did I mess this up? I did. This is supposed to be 2. That is I don't know where the 4 came from. I think I was just getting lost in my own explanation, which can happen. So just be sure to step back and make sure that you're like saying the right thing, right? This is me talking to myself. All right, cool. So after iterating through the entire string, we know that the values for each of the directions are all the same. So once we hit this like if statement, we're going to check, okay, is direction at n the same as direction at s? And we know that to be true. Okay, that's great. That's cool. And then direction at e, is the value of direction at e the same as direction with the key of w? And that is also true. So we know for a fact that should be returning true, which in our example case is also true. So I think this does like solve the problem.
Perfect. Awesome. So again, you have some time left on this problem. So you can use that however you want. You can try and refactor and optimize, maybe run through another example, or we can move on to the next question.
I mean, I know I could refactor by like turning this into like a ternary operation, but considering this condition is so long, that would just like run off the side. So I think I'm happy with this as is.
Sure.
Is that all right with you?
Totally fine. And to everyone watching the stream right now, I really like that he kind of gave an option of, okay, I could use a ternary here, but I'm not going to because of this. That's something that as an interviewer I would take note of. You know, like he's got a lot of ideas and he's kind of weighing the pros and cons of all of them. So it's, again, this all kind of comes back to being as open and verbal with your interviewer as possible about decisions that you're choosing to make and decisions that you're choosing not to make. But cool, yeah, so let's jump into the next question then. So I will copy this one over, just like I did the last one. And I am now making another question tab. So you should see a question 3 tab pop up.
Okay.
So move on over there. And so this will be our pair programming question. So have you ever pair programmed before?
I'm gonna say no.
Cool. So yeah, I mean, I'll always ask, you know, the person I'm interviewing if they've pair programmed before. If they say no, like Michael did just now, I'm gonna give a real explanation of it. And even if you had pair programming before, I'm probably still gonna just like summarize very quickly. But pair programming, it's very important here at App Academy. It's something that you'll be doing every day if you attend here. And it's a really great way to, you know, learn through being taught and then also learn through teaching. So it basically breaks down to 2 different roles. You have a driver and the navigator. And the navigator's main job is to be communicating with the driver line by line over kind of what they should write at each point. They're not touching the keyboard. And on the other hand, the driver is listening to the navigator and kind of working with them to actually code out whatever script you're writing line by line. The main goal of this exercise is communication. That's really the main thing we're looking for here. So it should be a 2-way street of communication. The navigator should be providing a lot of ideas and really trying to, you know, get the train rolling as far as ideas go, but he or she should also be really open to suggestions, and, you know, both roles should be really ensuring that each other is on the same page at the end of the day. Conversely, the driver, you are the one coding, typing along, but you should also not hesitate to ask for clarification for things that maybe don't make sense to you, or also offering suggestions, you know, in a respectful way, like, oh, that's a really good idea. What if we thought about maybe doing this? Do you think that would work too? So again, communication is the most important thing here. Please keep that in mind. But yeah, so moving on to this problem, you will start as the navigator, Michael. So you will be telling me what to type for the first portion of this problem, and then after that, we'll switch roles, okay?
Okay, sounds good.
Cool. And then just like the last 2 questions, before we actually jump into code, if you can we can just hash out maybe a high-level approach on how to attack this, okay?
All right, sounds good.
Cool. All right, so good luck. Here is our 3rd and final question.
Sequence search. You are given two strings, a sequence and a key. Write a function that determines if the characters of the key appear in order, although not necessarily contiguously in the sequence. All right, let's look at those examples. Arcata and cat results in true. True, false. Okay. All right, so I believe this problem is asking, we need to form a method that takes in two inputs. It is, one is like the first string, the second is the like a key, but it is literally a second string. So we want to see if the key, the second string, if like those characters appear in order, but not necessarily right next to each other within the first string. And if that is the case, then we are going to return true. Otherwise, we are going to return false. So like, yeah, in like example 9, if that's a little confusing for everyone, yeah, it has all the characters of cat in it, but we have like the C, the T, and the A. So it returns false because we don't have C, A, T in the correct like order existing at all within the first string. And if you conversely take like this example, we have C right here, A right here, T right there. So we know, yes, cat does form once within this string, even though they're not right next to each other, and that's still true. Does that make sense?
Yeah. So I think that's a good way to frame the question. So yeah, how are we thinking about maybe going through this? Do you have any ideas?
Yeah, I have one for now. I think maybe we can take like that second string, cat in this case, and split it up and put it into an array called like word or key, whatever we want to call it. And we will shift from that key. We'll take like the first character of that key out and be looking for it as we iterate through the first string. Whenever we come across that character, we know we've like hit that character, and we can just repeat and continue the process of like shifting from that word array. If we have like gone through that entire word array, aka we've found every letter in that order as we have iterated through the first string, then we know that the answer is true. Otherwise, it will be false. So that said, like, how can we break this down into like different strategy? Even though I am supposed to be the navigator, can I still write comments and notes for how we're gonna approach?
Yeah, that's totally fine.
All right, sweet. So we are going to create word array, which will equal like the second string, like split up. We are going to iterate through the first. We're iterating through string 1. We will shift like one character at a time from the word array, and every time we find shifted character, we shift off another character from word. And once we're done iterating, if there's like no more essentially like characters inside that word array, we know it's true. Otherwise, it's false. If word is empty, then it's true. Otherwise, it's false. All right.
Okay.
Cool.
So would it also work if we iterate through string 2, or do we have to be iterating through string 1? I'm not totally sure about that.
We definitely have to be iterating through string 1 because we are trying to see if like string 2 like appears and exists like within string 1. So we have to be iterating through string 1 at the very we have to absolutely have to like iterate through string 1 because string 2 will always ideally be like less in length than string 1. So
right,
we gotta look at all those characters.
Right. That makes sense. Cool. Yeah, awesome. So that sounds pretty good. Yeah, let's jump into code. I guess before we do that, so Michael did a great job kind of laying out kind of a plan, and he entertained any sort of a question about, I wasn't sure about one part of it, and he, patiently explained, this is why I think this decision makes sense. Again, for this question, communication is key. So it's good to maybe like ask your partner or your interviewer, like, does that make sense? Like, what do you think about this plan? Because this is really a real collaborative exercise. Cool. So yeah, let's get back into this and let's jump into code. So what should I? Oops, sorry. What should I start by writing?
All right, so we're gonna create the method first and foremost. So we'll say def sequence search, and then it will take an input of string 1 and string 2. Okay, let's close that off just to be safe. Sweet. All right, so let's grab that word in array format. So let's declare a new variable word, and we're going to set that equal to string2 dot split with the argument of like two quotes right next to each other, just so we know that we will be splitting it at every individual character.
Okay, so like this.
Yeah,
okay.
That's good. All right, sweet. So now we want to iterate through string 1. So we could do that in multiple different ways, but for the sake of simplicity, why don't we do this as a while loop? So let's set a count. We'll say I equals 0.
Okay. So I is 0. Sorry, I is 0.
Okay, cool. And while I is less than string 1 dot length.
Okay.
All right, sweet. Let's see. While I is less than string 1 dot length, we want to see if string 1 at I is equal to, oh, I think I forgot something. All right, so we need to be able to have a variable that is capable of looking at like, the current character that we need to look at and that we're looking for, right?
We need to be able to compare it to something, right?
Absolutely. So for the sake of keeping style as stylish as possible, why don't we put between lines 23 and 24 like a current character variable and set it equal to word.shift.
Okay.
Okay. And shift will always be like essentially like popping off a character from an array from the front of the array. So we always know we'll be looking for the correct word in the right order, right? So if, so now we want to use that conditional, right? We want to say like if, we want to say if, boom, well, I is a string. If string 1 at I.
If string 1.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Sorry. String 1 at I.
Yeah, if string 1 at I is equal to current character. Okay, and there's a little bit of a typo there, so we definitely got to add the H between. There we go.
Sorry.
No.
Cool. So we're about halfway through right now, so let's actually switch roles. Okay. So I'll navigate and you type.
All right, that sounds good.
Cool. So let's see. We're in the middle of this if statement. So what did we want to do here? I remember in your roadmap up here, we're going to be basically redefining which letter or which character we're looking for each time. And that's what this current car thing is. And so I guess like when we hit that if statement, if they are the same thing, we want to redefine what our current car is, right? Because we want to look for the next one. Cool. So I guess we can just do kind of that same current car equals word.shift.
Okay.
Right in there. Yep. Cool. And then I think we could just end that. Okay. And then end the while loop.
All right.
Cool. And then what else? Oh, I guess So
I do notice one thing. The while loop, that will iterate forever because we're not actually like changing I. So I think for us to do what we need to do, we'll have to increment I.
Oh yeah, sure. I totally missed that, but you're totally right. Yeah, so you're absolutely right. This is an infinite loop situation. So yeah, let's on line 30, let's just make a new line. And then just, I plus equal 1. Cool. So notice how that, guys, how even as the driver, Michael, he's not afraid to, if he notices something, he's not afraid to highlight it, in a respectful way and just say, oh, I think we'd need to increment I right here because this is why it's the header of our while loop right now. So don't be afraid to speak up. Again, like I'm going to say this 10 more times probably, but communication is key here. And the golden rule for pair programming is ensuring that you're on the same page. Cool. So jumping back into this, so let's see what our logic's doing right now. We are continuously redefining what our current character is, and then every time we hit a match, we redefine what the current character to be the next thing. Cool. So I guess once we get to the end of this, if current character is not nil, then it should return false, right?
If current character is not nil.
Because if we think about it, current character, if we end up finding all of these characters in a row, it's going to keep shifting.
Correct.
And then eventually, when it finds the last one, it should shift, nil onto it,
correct.
Right?
Yes, that's correct. So yes, if current character equals nil at any point, then we know that it's true.
Yeah. So I think we can just maybe return that at the end. We can say like, if current character return false, because that should just be a Boolean, right?
Yep.
And then else we can return true. Okay, cool. So yeah, what are you thinking about this solution so far?
I think this answers the problem, but we definitely could refactor this real quick, just because we know current character will either be a character that we're still looking for, or it will be nil. So my suggestion would just having a comparator right at the end. Is current character equal to nil? If it's true, then it returns true, and if it's not nil, then it will return false.
Yeah, I think you're totally right. Yeah, because if we think about it, that should return a Boolean in itself, and the Boolean is what we're trying to return in the end anyway. So yeah, I think you're totally right. So I think we can maybe refactor this if else to just be, return current character equal to nil. And maybe even just use implicit return too, if we want to go extra fancy.
Want to go above and beyond. All right, I think that's pretty clean.
Cool, awesome. So we still have some time. So could you maybe just walk me through one of these with one of these examples? Let's use example on line 8. This.
All right, no worries. Okay, so with sequence search, we are putting this character right in string 1. We are putting cat in string 2. So we could say string 1 equals C1A2 T3, string 2 equals cat. All right, cool. So our word variable is going to equal CAT. So whenever we shift, when we shift off the bat, we're going to create a current character variable, and that's going to be equal to the shifting of word. So that will equal C right off the bat. And if we want to just keep it cool and understand what's actually happening, our word array should have this within it still, right? Great. So now we are going to iterate through. Now we're at this step using the while loop and using a counter variable. So as long as I is less than the string 1 dot length, we are just going to continuously iterate through it. If string 1 at I equals the current character, so string 1 at I is C, right? And the current character we're looking for is also C. So this will be true. Great. So now we are essentially shifting word again, and then our current character is now going to equal A, and word is now going to equal T. Cool. Awesome. Yeah, so that's true. That happens. We're going to increment I no matter what. We're going to reach the next letter. It's going to be the next character. It's going to be a 1. That doesn't pass, so we move on ahead. A, that is what we're looking for. That's awesome. So now we're going to say current character equals T. Now we got word, which is just an empty array at this point. And now we're just going to keep going through. The next character is, after we increment, the next character is at 2. That does not satisfy this condition. The next character is a T, which is the very last thing that we are looking for. That's awesome. Current character is now going to be shifted with, is going to shift a word again, but that's going to be nil because, you know, word don't got nothing. And we're just going to keep going through. You know, that actually brings up another point. We can even end this and optimize this even a little bit more just from what we just did by saying if current character is equal to nil, we can even say return true. We can make that a one-line if statement right there, just for a little bit of optimization. Just if we know at any point our current character is nil, we have gone through the word array and found everything as we are iterating through the first string, being able to end that early. So with that small change, we can actually like end the program there and return true. So that would be, you know, pretty cool.
Cool, awesome. And I think we could also, there's like another fun Ruby method that I think we could just use a .nil question mark just on the end too.
We can do that.
If we want to go extra fancy.
Want to be real Ruby-esque.
But very cool. Yeah, so we did just run out of time, so I'm going to have to stop us right there. But yeah, thanks for running me through. So let me just copy this over. And to anyone watching, we pretty much reached a solution on this this demonstration, but it's not uncommon to not reach a solution on the pair programming question. So don't freak out if you know, if you don't completely get that one right or you don't reach a solution in the end. Again, the main purpose of this pair programming exercise is really to give us a sense of how you work with people. You know, like, are you fun to work with, and do you really embrace the pair programming mindset? So yeah, this has been really great. Normally at this point, I would open the floor to any questions from Michael that he has for me. But I think alternatively, we are all just going to open the floor for any questions that you guys have been asking in the group chat.
Awesome.
All right.
So, yeah.
Hello again. So we've been able to answer most of the questions in the group chat, if you look at it. Some of the main questions people have about interviews are about languages. So, Ruby, JavaScript, Java, Python are the 4 languages that we support in the interviews. Other people had questions about how many prompts are in the interview. Just like this one, there are 3 prompts, 2 solo and 1 pairing prompt. Let's see. What else? An interesting question about, okay, if I'm using Java, how should I prepare? So we have our prep work, and our prep work has prompts in it. And so you can kind of use those to gauge kind of what you need to prepare for. You can actually take those prompts and like turn them into Java. But when you do that, Java is a little bit more, is a lower level language. There's a lot more boilerplate involved. So when we actually do the interviews, we let you, you don't have to define a class or anything. You just define the method. And also, you know, you can take shortcuts, like instead of converting everything to an array, just use an array list, things that make it easier. Let's see. I think we have a couple of questions that just came in at the bottom here. Do we need to worry about time complexity? So this is actually generally good advice when solving any kind of interview prompt. Yes, but don't worry about it too much at first, right? The thing to do is to get to a solution. The main thing for us is, again, that you're able to think through the problem, that you're able to be fluent with code. Those are kind of the main things. Time complexity is an issue that we don't really even expect our applicants to have to deal with or worry about. But I mean, it's always nice if you can. It's more an issue after our program. Our job seekers, we really drill time complexity into them because it ends up being a big thing. Yes, Eden and Michael are laughing over there because they know they're job seekers. Cool. Let's see. Any other questions we have in the chat? How long is this video up? I intend to leave it up until, you know, we have a replacement. It'll be up for as long as you need it if you have an interview scheduled, for sure. Let's see. It is great to see the Ruby language has so many shortcuts and common tasks to check if nil. Oh yeah, check if nil. Yep. You can do equal nil. One thing they didn't show you, which is a little bit of a higher level thing, you can do .nil, which is actually a method, because in Ruby they love having lots of methods, a method that tells you if something's null. Very Ruby-esque. Cool. I think that's all the questions I see up. We'll go ahead and end this stream. If you have any other questions, go ahead and reach out to admissions@appacademy.io. Our admissions counselors will be happy to assist you, and we will see you at the interview. All right.
Thanks so much, everyone.
Awesome. Thank you. Take care, everyone.